Back in 2017, the Caligula Effect released in the heels of Persona 5 on the PlayStation Vita. It launched to lackluster fare due to the poor performance and poor pacing issues in the game's story. Fast forward 2 years and an anime later, and we now have the Caligula Effect Overdose, a remake of the original Vita game completely redone in the Unreal Engine 4. Along with nicer visuals and better performance, the game also has a ton of added content, such as new members of the Go Home Club, a new dungeon, some story changes, and the ability to play as a female protagonist. The Caligula Effect Overdose's story starts out pretty frantic. As you begin a new school year, you come to realize that everything in the world around you is not as what it seems. The people around you start getting distorted like you're in some kind of computer program. After fleeing from the entrance ceremony, you learn that the world around you is indeed a fake one created by the idol Mew. Mew's dream is to make everyone happy, and every person in this world are people who wanted to leave their old lives behind, including yourself. Not satisfied with these chain of events, you join the Go Home Club. The Go Home Club is an organization at school centered around a common goal: to go home. It is from here you begin to investigate into the world of Mobius and uncover the dark secrets that lie in wait that are preventing you from returning to reality. In order to find out what in the world is going on, you begin to investigate into a crypto government that runs this world, a group of composers pulling the strings to make sure everyone is locked into Mobius. Each composer you face will have a dungeon of their own to explore, so don't worry if the entire game at first feels like you're just exploring one giant schoolhouse. You will be able to explore more parts of Mobius the more truths you begin to uncover. What sets the Caligula Effect Overdose apart from a lot of other turn-based JRPGs is the fact you're able to view your actions in real time. When you engage with Digiheads, the other inhabitants of Mobius who are a bit corrupted, you will pick your attack and you'll see your attack play out in front of you in real time. From here you'll get to see what effects your attack will have and how it'll play out in the battle. This combat becomes much more in-depth when you finally have a full party at your disposal. You'll be able to set up combos for other characters to play off of, such as launching one of your enemies up in the air and having another one follow up to gun them down, keeping them airborne, thus allowing another party member to go in and finish them off. It should be noted though that all of your visions into the future are not always the be-all end-all. If the attack does not go as planned and the enemy does something else, you'll have to plan your moves again when your turn comes around. Outside of the dungeon crawling around Mobius, you'll run into literally hundreds of other people that you can befriend. Although I use the term befriend very liberally, but I'll dive more into that a bit later. You have the ability to befriend your classmates, text them, do favors for them, and recruit them to join your party. I found this system to be interesting as it attempted to make the world seem much bigger than it actually was, but sadly it just led to being one of the few issues I had with this game. Honestly, I really do love the story that the Caligula Effect is trying to tell. It can be very dark at times and has many twists and turns, and with Overdose adding a lot more story content, there's a lot to explore in this game. However, the issue is trying to get to this content. One thing that was not fixed in the original issue of this game is the game's overall pacing. Sometimes the dungeons you're in can drag on for far too long, and the challenges of each dungeon really just boil down to exploring maze-like hallways and streets to find a certain item and bring it back to an arbitrary start point. This just makes me wonder what in the world is the point of me doing half the things I'm doing between each story beat. This is an honest shame because of how engaged I was in the game's story, but I could not play the game for longer than an hour and a half or so due to the constant slog it became. One more issue I'd like to talk about is the game's social issue. You have the ability to befriend literally hundreds of students, and each one supposedly has their own story as to why they are in Mobius. It's just a small blurb, but I can overlook it. What the game is trying to accomplish is creating a realistic school environment. You see, of all of these people, they are grouped into subsets, each one having their own sub-story going alongside the main one. Even though you're trying to escape Mobius, things are still moving on without you. The problem is, there's never a real incentive to do any of these. Sure, I befriended a few people and started a few of these questlines to see what they were all about, but they really weren't all that engaging. I would much rather have preferred a smaller pool of students to befriend with much more fleshed out characters and plots, as opposed to just constantly going from point A to point B. And this also doesn't help for the fact that these students are always randomly moving around the map, so it becomes a massive pain trying to hunt down where each student is when you're trying to find an exact one to continue on a quest or to befriend another person, as sometimes you'll have to befriend other students before you can actually talk to another student that's involved with a quest line, and sometimes that chain of talking to one person and another one can go very deep. But yeah, I kind of had enough of this point A to point B movements in the main game, so this couldn't even serve as a distraction to me. This is unfortunate because the character development of the main cast is top notch and enjoyable. I will say one of the biggest improvements to Overdose would have to be the visual and performance department. On the PlayStation Vita, the base game targeted 30 frames per second, and it had a hard time keeping it there. On the PlayStation 4, the game manages to hold a locked 60 frames per second as far as I could tell, and as for the Switch version, it stays at a consistent 30 frames per second in handheld mode. This solved my largest gripe with the original game because of how blurry and sluggish it ran. The original game was physically hard for me to play as well. I guess that explains the lack of review from me on the PlayStation Vita version. Outside of that, the music is just as good as ever though. Each area has a different song that plays, with an instrumental version for the overworld and a lyrical version for the battles. It's just a shame that these tracks are all the ones you can really expect to enjoy, so after wandering these dungeons for several hours, it can get a bit grating by the end. But at the end of the day, I really did appreciate the enhanced performance this version has to offer. Honestly, the Caligula Effect Overdose is a really solid game. I was very surprised as to how much I was enjoying myself playing this game compared to the original release. With all of the performance issues addressed in the new content, this game is honestly worth playing. If you're a fan of the original Persona and Persona 2 duology, this game might just be for you. This game is definitely not for everyone though. A lot of the issues I mentioned here are what is keeping me from giving this game a ringing endorsement. The Caligula Effect Overdose is an enjoyable time once you get into the groove of it. Just try to take it in reasonable quantities. And that does it for our review of the Caligula Effect Overdose. To see the written review, be sure to check out my website, gaminggamma.com. A link to that review will be provided down in the description bar below. If you have any comments or questions for me about the game or the review, by all means leave them down in the comment section below as well. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you're new to my channel, finding me out for the first time through this review, hey, be sure to subscribe for future reviews, commentaries, let's plays, and more. And I would also like to give a special thanks to my patrons on Patreon for making today's review possible. And as always, everyone, thanks for watching.